So today I want to do a different type of video, kind of retrospective remembrance of the times that I played and why I fell in love with the original God of War games.
Tell the God of War I am his no longer.
Your final lesson is at hand.
Let's start with the first one, God of War. Before we even start talking about the gameplay, look at the artwork for this game. Is it just me, or does it seem like artwork for games in the last few years has really been lacking? Because that is some extremely good artwork. Now, let's talk about the actual game. The first time I ever got my hands on God of War on the PlayStation 2 was after I got out of high school, so probably around the year 2008. And my dad owned it, and he's like, hey, you ever played these games, God of War? And I'm like, no. And he gave me the first game, and holy crap. After the very first time of ever playing God of War, I was hooked. I literally could not put the game down. A little backstory on me from when I was a kid is I loved reading about Greek mythology. It stemmed from my love of reading The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and then it carried over to me wanting to read, you know, all the Greek mythology tales of, you know, Ulysses and Odysseus and everything like that. So when I began to play God of War, and me not knowing that these games had anything to do with the Greek pantheon and going across all the different gods and kind of fucking up the lore of all the characters in those stories and in those legends, it was a very fun and unique experience. Something I wish that I could experience again for the first time. It's been a long time since I played a game series that's really hooked me in, as much as the God of War, at least the first two games, hooked me in. Now, I did love God of War 3, but I'm not talking about God of War 3 today, or ranting about the new God of War games, or that really terrible God of War Ascension game. I'm not going to talk about those. But when I started playing God of War, like I said, I couldn't put it down. I was at my dad's house and I'm playing it, and I literally played the whole thing in one sitting, in one night. That's how hooked I was. I could not put the game down. I don't think I'd ever played a game like God of War before. I never played Devil May Cry. It sounds like a kind of a sin when you say it out loud for some, but yeah, I never played the Devil May Cry games, and I still haven't played the Devil May Cry games. But God of War was something I'd never experienced before. These huge button combination attacks that you could do, mixed with a really good story and a character that is a bad guy, and you kind of feel bad for, even though you kind of shouldn't feel bad for him. Makes a deal with the devil, essentially Ares, to crush my enemies and see them driven before me, and I will serve you forever, kind of thing. Like that epic stuff that you see in the first game.
To save himself.
Ares!
The sky split apart, and the God of War stepped through. Descending from Olympus, he saw the makings of a god in a mere mortal. Ares would save Kratos. He would turn him into the perfect warrior.
And of course we know that with Kratos' story, at least for God of War 1 and 2, he kind of gets fucked over the whole time by the gods. In fact, the whole reason that his family is dead is basically almost the gods' fault. I'm not going to say all the way, but 90% of the reason why Kratos' wife and his daughter are dead is because of the gods. And which is funny is when you look at God of War now, and it's been such a long time now since the PlayStation 2, when you look at God of War now, it looks nothing like how God of War was before. Doesn't play the same, doesn't look the same, Kratos doesn't act the same, doesn't have the same voice actor. Like I said, I'm not going to rant about that too much, but God of War then, God of War here, was a very violent game. Was a very well-written, story-driven game. A game that obviously did its research on the Greek mythology and all the different stories of characters. I was blown away by how much little tiny details of things that were in this game that I just thought, like, wow, only real nerds are gonna know, like, some of the shit that you see in this game. So after playing the game in one whole sitting, I knew that I had to play this game again. And I literally kept playing the first God of War game over and over and over again until I collected everything. And let me tell you, back in the days when you still had, you know, early internet forums, the early 2000s forums, you know, close to 2010 at that point. But when you had these early forums and you had just your friends coming over and watching you play video games, there was no gamer scores, there was no achievements, there was nothing like that. All you had back then was literally bragging rights. So if you went to your friend and said, hey, did you play God of War? He's like, yeah. I'm like, did you play it? Did you play God of War on the hardest difficulty? Man, I couldn't beat it. It was just too damn hard. And that's when you're like, well, I fucking beat it. And that's when your friends are like, God damn. Now, literally, I don't think I ever had that conversation once with anybody in real life, but except for maybe my dad, and he was like, whoa, you wasted a lot of time. No, but in reality, bragging rights for video games was a thing. I came from that era of games where if you beat a really, really hard game, you'd want to tell your friends that you beat it. And maybe you were the first one out of your friends who beat it on the hardest difficulty. For me, I've always been that way. I always play games and then I try to, and if I really, really like them, I play them over and over and over again until I've stomped it all the way out. There's nothing left for the game to offer me. Difficulty-wise, collection-wise, I do it all. And God of War was one of those games, and I can't tell you how much of a cheating motherfucker the end of that game is. And I'm not just talking about Ares. Ares on the God mode is like one of the most cheating motherfuckers I've ever seen in video game history. He'd be like in the top 10 of PlayStation 2 bosses on the hardest difficulty who were like cheap assholes the whole time. But after that, just when you think the game is over, that's why I also love this twist ending. You think you've done everything, you think you're good, you beat Ares, and all of a sudden you get sucked into this fucking warp portal where you have to fight like 50 of yourself, 50 Kratoses, and at the same time go over to your dead family and go give them a hug and drain your energy bar and protect them at the same time from all these different Kratoses. That, my friends, is bragging rights when you can beat that on the hardest difficulty. Some of you might say, well, that's child's play, that's easy. Meh. But I'm telling you right now, back in that time, and still right now today, I guarantee some of you have never ever played God mode because it's just like, why would I want to put myself through that? And I don't blame you. I can tell you, I threw the PlayStation controller quite a few times at the end, especially when you've played the game so much that you know how close you are to the end of beating either Ares or beating the Kratos horde. You know how close you are to beating it. And then you like get cheap killed in the last like 5 seconds. Oh man, I can't even tell you how many times I probably threw that controller until I beat that game. But I did it. And then we go into God of War 2.
Zeus, your son has returned! I bring the destruction of Olympus!
This is my definitive favorite God of War game out of the entire franchise. The reason for that reason being is that God of War 2's story is just, it's almost like the Star Wars trope, right? It's got really good story, really good gameplay, and it's got all those weird twists in the story that make you go like, whoa, what the fuck kind of moments happen in the second God of War game. You find out that Zeus is your father. He kills you. He drains all your powers. The Sisters of Fate, who you go to get help from, they're all in line with Zeus and they want to fuck you up. And you literally go through killing everyone that you thought was left of the Greek pantheon until God of War 3. You know, you got Hercules and Hera and all them, but the rest of the gods. But you kill off so many minute characters in the Greek mythology. It was just really cool and fun to see. The monsters this time, like the boss monsters, are like 10 times bigger than they were. And that's hard to do because the first monster you fight in the game, the first thing you fight in the first God of War game, is the freaking Hydra. So, I mean, everything in God of War 1 and 2 is just so bombastic and huge and outdoes itself. Even through God of War 3. And the gameplay, I want to tell you this. If the gameplay lacked it all, as far as like how good the hit detection was for the buttons, how much the platforming paid, like you had to make sure the platforming was like on point to make sure this game was not going to be bad. Because even though there are puzzles in God of War, they all are very much based around platforming and how fast you can maneuver Kratos around. So there are times when you're doing puzzles that are timed and you got to run and jump and do a bunch of different things, or you die. And if any of that was off, the game would suck. And it doesn't. The gameplay actually got better. Kratos got better weapons. He got new abilities, which was awesome. And you got new varieties of monsters to fight with your old monsters. And the story was a cohesive whole as far as tying into the first game, right into the second game. So I loved it. And my fun story, well, it's kind of a fun and sad story, I guess. As we all know, when you're young and you're moving out, or you're living on your own. This was, actually I still think this was the same year. It was either 2008 or 2009. I had an apartment with an ex-girlfriend, and you know, that didn't work out and she moved out. So I had the apartment all to myself, but at the same time, when you're not having two people in one place anymore, you're making sure you're paying all that extra money that you weren't paying before. So as I'm trying to live out on my own and I'm, you know, getting myself all started in the world at 18, man, that was a long fucking time ago. 33 now this year. That was a long fucking time ago. Shit. So the funny thing about the God of War games is, in order back then, if I was ever struggling a month to pay rent and I needed to hurry and get the money in as fast as possible to get those bullshit money orders you used to have to do, I would unfortunately have to go to GameStop and sell my games back to GameStop. Now, the funny thing about this is every time I would get enough money back saved up after paying rent, it'd be literally the next week, I'd go back to the same GameStop and rebuy God of War 1 and 2 again, just to play over again. And God of War 2 was no different than God of War 1. I played it religiously. I played it so much that when my now wife, who was my girlfriend later on, or before, when she first met me, all I played was fucking God of War. The only reason she even knows what God of War is because how often I would fucking play it and talk about it. Like, I'd play and talk about other video games and stuff to her, but I was playing God of War 2 non-stop. And the reason for that is because I was playing, again, to max out everything that the game could offer. Beating it on the hardest difficulty and unlocking all of the different secret things you can get in the game, which was, you know, all the badass armor that Kratos would have, and the freaking Sword of Olympus that you could carry as a primary weapon throughout the game, having unlimited freaking magic abilities and everything else like that. It was one of the most fun times I had as an early, before my 20s youth, living out on my own and freaking playing God of War 1 and 2 over and over and over again. And I can't tell you how much I lost my fucking shit when God of War 3's demo had came out on the PS3. I think I was 20, maybe 21 at the time when the God of War 3 demo came out on the PlayStation 3, and I lost my shit, and I played that demo over and over and over again. Something that I really loved about the God of War games was the replayability, the fact that they had so many hidden secrets that you could find and different things to unlock, and there was always something by like the 6th or 7th playthrough that I never noticed on the previous playthroughs, like something a character had said, maybe something that I had just missed reading one of the little journal logs or something like that. There was just so much in those first 2 God of War games that was offered. Not only that, but I remember after beating the first God of War game, the very, very first one, you get like this secret unlockable room. It's like a trophy room. And you get this, there's like a statue of the Minotaur beast that you kill that's like guarding Hades' area. There's a statue of Ares because you killed him. And I think there's one other one. I can't remember. It's been so long. But the secret thing at that time, because back then on the PlayStation 2, all that stuff, developers like to hide Easter eggs in games. It's not something you see very often anymore in games where Easter eggs are, you know, it's kind of like they're either there or they're not for the most part. Most of the time they're not in modern games today. But back then, there were Easter eggs almost all the time in games. And in God of War 1 is still one of the coolest Easter eggs I think that I've ever seen in games ever. I know I sound like it's just a fanboy rant, but it's true. It's true. And it's when you just sit there and there's a distinct noise that you would hear when Kratos hits stuff with his blades or a weapon. It's like a distinct noise that you know. And if you turn around and hit the statues behind Kratos, they made that noise for some reason. There's a definite different noise between hitting something that can't break and hitting something that can. You know immediately between the two. So when you're hearing this noise, immediately in my mind, these have to be destroyable. So, what did I do? I sit there and I hit this fucking thing forever. I'm telling you that I wish that there was like a visual life bar that I could tell you for these fucking statues behind Kratos. But there's not. There's not. But you hit them for what seems like forever and they break. And what you get is like a secret code message that you'd have to decipher in order to get a phone number to call. Now, I want to try to see if the number for destroying the statue room still exists. That one's really funny.
By the gods, you've done it.
By the gods!
On your way here to me. I offer you my congratulations and my respect. Together, we shall conquer the perils that lay before us, and we shall always...
Dude, they did it. They found our Easter egg.
Who are you?
It's me, David Jaffe. I directed the game.
What game?
Your game, God of War.
Go away or I'll...
Dude, don't you get it? These guys, they spent all that time breaking those statues. I mean, they must have taken like forever. And then they figured out the whole secret code thing.
I do not know what you are talking about.
We hid this secret pretty damn deep, huh, Kratos?
If I kill you, I will get help or...
So wait. If you got the secret from the net or a magazine, then actually you kind of suck. I mean, work for it a bit, right, Kratos? Actually, can I call you Crate?
No. Go away or
Hey,
I'll...
don't you hate it when they get the codes off the net? So lazy. Hey, say, Crate, what are you so pale for?
I am serious.
You know, up close, you actually look kind of pasty, if you don't mind me saying. It's kind of gross.
Oh, my, that's it! Ah! Oh, jeez, Claire, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Oh my god. So that's what I'm talking about. Easter eggs in games. It's like, I should make it a completely different video one day talking about Easter eggs in games that I love from growing up. But I swear that God of War's Easter eggs are some of the greatest. And the one thing I remember the most being the biggest mystery for, it was either the end of God of War 1 or 2. I want to say it was 2. Where you beat the entire game, you unlock all the secret ending videos, and you watch the developer video that came with it. If you were one of the lucky ones, this was like an exclusive back in the day to get the 2-disc set where it came with like the DVD making of God of War 2. But there was a giant mystery at the time because the PSP wasn't out. There was no PSP games. Was talking about Kratos' brother. And Kratos' brother being like in hell or in working with some of the gods, or it was like a really weird story thing that I remember being like mind-blowing at the time, because as far as you knew, Kratos didn't have any family besides his dad Zeus, which I mean would make Hercules his brother, but it was just one of those things that was very mind-blowing at the time. And I still love God of War today. I really am kind of sad and disappointed where God of War has gone in the future after God of War 3. God of War 3 is like something I could say for another video, maybe, but I just really wanted to make a video talking about how much I loved God of War 1 and God of War 2. They are some of the most fond early adult memories that I had, having a PlayStation 2 and buying my games and then going through the tough time of having to sell them and rebuy them and sell them again and rebuy them to keep playing them. It was just one of those, it's something I'll never forget. I'm sure many of you have memories like that with games, and God of War 1 and 2 were one of those for me, and it just fell right into my love of Greek mythology and all the stories that I read growing up. And Kratos himself was just a bad-ass character. He fit perfectly in with the world. And it's funny because you go to talk to some people and they try to act like purists, like, well, God of War, you know, it's really stupid story because, you know, Zeus would never do that. Zeus would never act like that. You know, Athena would never, ever betray Zeus. Another thing I want to bring up about God of War is there's just so many quotable one-liners in the game. You find yourself saying them without even realizing you're saying them. Like sometimes, like me and my brother would do this all the time because after I showed him the God of War games, he fell in love with them too. And we would always go back and forth and be like, Ares! All the time. And, you know, every time we would be playing with toys or something like that. And there'd be random points where one of us just tries to make the other one laugh by quoting something from God of War. Like, where he's about to commit suicide at the very beginning of the first one. He's like, the gods of Olympus have abandoned me. Kind of thing. It's just stuff that we would do all the time, and it was fun. My brother would always, like, almost laugh, whenever the chains for Kratos would be starting to get singed on his arm, and it looks like Kratos is, like, ate some bad tacos or something, and he's like, oh!
Once attached, the chains remained so, chained and seared to the flesh, a part of the bearer's body, a permanent reminder of Kratos' pledge. In return...
It's stuff like that that makes these games even more special and more fun. Yeah, anyway, guys, this is just a quick, well, I guess it's not really a quick video, but just a kind of fan love rant about how much I enjoyed God of War 1 and 2. And if you guys enjoyed this, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe for more content like this, and let me know in the comment section about what your favorite games were from when any games. Go ahead and tell me what any of your favorite games are. If you have any memories like this with a game that you love. And if you want to see another video, maybe dedicated to what I think about the new God of War games, God of War Ascension, God of War 3, or anything else related to God of War. Since I'm probably never going to do a game review for both these games, it's just everyone knows by this time what God of War is. So yeah, anyway guys, this is Forrest, this is Retro or Die, and I'll see you in the next video.
Everything you have ever known, Kratos, will now suffer because of your sacrilege. You will never be the ruler of Olympus. The cycle ends here.